Welcome everybody back into Nerd Sesh. As always, I'm Carson Brabber and alongside me is Logan Camden. And today we are joined by good friend of the show, one of our favorite guests here at Nerd Sesh, Tyler, aka Hoop Venue. Great to have you with us here today, Tyler. How we doing?
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me. I am in a great mood because we are less than 2 weeks from the play-in. April's the greatest month. You got the playoffs coming in, weather's getting nicer, sun's out. Like, man, I'm doing great, man.
It's a good time to be an NBA fan because obviously we've just gone through the lull of March and now, like you said, we're building up to the real thing, baby. We got the playoffs coming in hot. And with the playoffs coming so soon, I feel like we have a crazy state of affairs in the Western Conference right now. Because when I was watching that Warriors-Lakers game last night, two teams that you think figure somewhere into the mix as those upper echelon Western Conference playoff teams, I couldn't help but think, like, I don't know who the second best team in the West is right now. I think that conversation is wide open. So, Tyler, I want to start with you. Who do you view as that number two in the West?
Dude, when you first asked me this question, my immediate response was like, it could be anyone from 2 through 8 in the standings right now. The West is so tightly knit, and I'm super excited for the 7-8 play-in game because I think it's going to be like just an absolute battle to avoid OKC in the first round.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, dude, 2 through 8 is just so maybe the closest it's ever been. And I honestly think the answer comes down to matchups. It comes down to, like, I think there's a real possibility that the second best team in the West ends up being a first round exit. And it's just because there's so much competition. So to me, that's a playoff question. And I'll try to use process of elimination. I think the most important thing going into the playoffs is schematic versatility on both ends of the floor. How can you adjust to your opponent and counter whatever they're trying to do? And 3 teams that I think take a hit there are the Nuggets, for one. I think the Nuggets are just so limited to what they do. They're so good at what they do because they have Jokic, but they're so limited on both ends of the floor. I think the Lakers are pretty limited because they're relying on Jackson Hayes to be their only rotation 5, and then a lot of small ball. They have to switch a lot, and they still haven't quite figured out the offensive process between their big 3. I think the Clippers are another team that's very rigid schematically in terms of what they have to do on offense and defense with the Harden ball, with Zubats and drop, not having a backup 5. So those 3 teams all take a hit for me. Then I'm looking at sheer talent, and I think that's where Houston takes a hit. I think Houston's offense really worries me come playoff time, even if they have figured some stuff out. Jalen Green looks phenomenal. I can't wait to see what that looks like against a playoff defense.
March is wrapped up, Tyler. We know.
It is March, but you never know. You never know. The Rockets, I think, lack the talent to be the second best team in the West right now. And then the other one that I go to is just like question mark. I don't know what to make of the Grizzlies right now. I don't know what to make of the increased usage with Ja, the coaching situation, what Jaren Jackson's going to look like in the playoffs. That's a team that I just loop in as a big question mark. So that leaves 2 teams for me that I think make the most compelling case to be the second best team. That is the Warriors and the Timberwolves. I think those 2 teams check all of the boxes I'm looking for. I think they both have a lot of schematic versatility on both ends. I think they have a lot of talent on both ends. Maybe the 2 best defenders going into the playoffs. I think both teams have proven to some extent that they can go into a deep playoff run and do what they want to do. And dare I say, Minnesota has low-key had OKC's number all year. So if I had to like pick a team to pose the biggest threat to OKC, it probably is Minnesota or Golden State. So yeah, I think just checking those boxes, I think my answer would have to be either one of Golden State or Minnesota.
Damn, hold your horses, Tyler. I was saving Minnesota for a later question in the show, man. I was hoping nobody was going to bring them up for this. I do like Minnesota a lot. I ended up going with the Warriors, and I think schematic versatility has a lot to do with it. Also, just the stretch of basketball that they've been playing on post-Jimmy Butler. They're 20-4 with Jimmy. They got an offensive rating of 121.7 with him, a defensive rating of 111.1, and a net rating of 10.6 with Jimmy. And a lot of the teams, I think you had an excellent breakdown just now, Tyler, over all the teams in the West. But the Nuggets, I'm concerned about their defense in certain matchup. The Lakers, I'm just really concerned about the level that Luka is at right now and the level that he needs to be at as a scorer for me to really believe in them in a playoff context. And then the Clippers, who I've been a hater of all year long, I honestly think are probably the most well-rounded and dependable team, but I just don't trust Kawhi's health. So that's why I circle back to Golden State. I think they've got three of the smartest players in the West. I think they all work really well together. I think Steph is one of those tier one guys that I believe in. And I don't think Minnesota's that far off. I'm going to save Minnesota for a different question, but right now I do think it's Golden State, but I fundamentally think I agree with you, Tyler, more so than anything else. I think it is going to be matchup dependent because I think there are matchups that Golden State I would probably favor the other team, but I think they're probably the most solid out of the bunch.
I do think that that's the big takeaway. Like, matchups are going to be absolutely massive in the West for everybody except for OKC, because I think they're just that much better than everybody else. But even for them, right, there are different teams of a similar caliber who pose different levels of threats. So there are two teams who you brought up, Tyler, who I wouldn't even include in this conversation. The Rockets, to me, are the easiest by far to write off in a playoff context because of the half-court offense being as bad and as limited as it is. And then the Grizzlies, I do think, are a level above them. But I do think that their half-court offense is still very middling. Their defense has regressed as of late. I do feel very weird about their state of affairs. They've just been playing bad basketball as of late. So I would have them 7th. And then you get to the pack where you have the Nuggets and the Lakers and the Clippers and the Warriors and the Timberwolves. Those are the 5 that are really in a range that is so close, and the gap from the best of those teams to the worst of those teams has shrunk to like almost nothing, to the point where it really does depend on who is their opponent as much as anything. It's interesting that the first couple teams you eliminated were the Nuggets and the Lakers, because I feel like those two fall into the exact same category for me for different reasons, but they're the two teams who most clearly have like an absolute superpower and who have the biggest superstar factor. Nikola Jokic and just the totality of Denver's offense. And then obviously the Lakers theoretically having the best duo in basketball with Luka and Bron, theoretically having the best offensive big three in basketball. And for that reason, like, those have been the two teams who, for the most part, since the Luka trade, I have viewed as like the next couple teams in the West after OKC. But they also have the biggest, most glaring red flags. Like, Denver's just flat out a bad defense. They're 20th in defensive rating, hasn't improved at all this year. Their point of attack defense is bad. Their rim protection is bad. They have major limitations in terms of their defensive scheme, how they can cover pick and roll. They have to put 2 on the ball so consistently and bring Jokic up to the level, and that's just a really big concern for me when you lack that sort of defensive versatility and defensive personnel to begin with. So we've seen that they have like a nightmare matchup if you look at Minnesota sweeping them this year. A team that can kind of bully them physically, that's super athletic on the perimeter with a guy like Ant, who they just cannot stay in front of, who they can't keep away from the rim, who they can't deter at the rim. That's a really problematic matchup, and they've let up a bunch of wide open threes there. Then you look at the Lakers, and like, they just haven't been good at basketball since their 8-game win streak. Like, there's been a lot of really mediocre stuff from LA. They're 20th in defensive rating in their last 15 games. And they had that really impressive stretch where they were going small and they were super active defensively during their initial win streak. But since then, I just think you've seen, as you mentioned, the issues that come with only having one playable center. The fact that for a team that tries to go small so much, they're really quite slow on the perimeter. And when you're playing Luka and Austin Reeves such heavy minutes together as your defensive backcourt, I just think that's very problematic. And you saw yesterday the Warriors just cooking them, especially Luka, just because their speed is so superior out on the perimeter. And then, Logan, you mentioned the other big concern with the Lakers. It's Luka Doncic, because for them to be a serious threat to win a playoff series, to win multiple playoff series, like, that formula hinges upon, hey, we have 2 effectively unstoppable offensive players. And Luka just has not been that. In LA, he's giving you under 27 points per game on below league average true shooting, and he's shooting 47% on 2-pointers. Like, the diminished ability to get to the rim, to finish in the paint, has been very real and pronounced for him with the Lakers, and they haven't figured out the fit. They're 18th in offensive rating since Luka joined the team. So you see the potential with them if Luka just becomes the player that he was last season again. But like, they really, really have to turn the corner in a number of ways. They have to find a way to become an elite offense, and they have to find a way to become a serious defense with their personnel, that's a difficult challenge. Then you look at the Warriors and the T-Wolves, who are kind of in a group of their own to me because they've been playing phenomenal basketball as of late. The Warriors are 19-2 when Steph and Jimmy both play together, and like, it's just such pretty basketball. The fit is so great. Everything flows so beautifully. They have this genius big three. We were initially going to discuss today if they have the smartest big three in NBA history, which I actually think they do. I think Steph, Draymond, Jimmy, they're all basketball geniuses who complement each other so well. And then Steph, since the Warriors got Jimmy, has been a top 4 player. Like, when Steph is giving you 28 points per game on 66% true shooting, he's going to be one of the most impactful offensive players in the history of this game, and you are going to have major offensive upside. I think another key thing that has really been going right for them as of late has been the play of Brandon Podziemski, who is always going to have his inconsistencies. Like Logan, just last episode, I was kind of clowning on him for some of his paint footwork and finishes that he attempts. But, like, he's been a 40% three-point shooter.
Bro.
I love Pods, bro. I've always loved Pods, but, like, he has his goofy moments and he has his inconsistencies. But when he's feeling himself, when he's reliably knocking down his jumpers off the catch and as a pull-up shooter, he's such an effective basketball player because he does all of the little things. He's such a great complement as a playmaker, as a high-effort defender, as a really good positional rebounder. And since he came back from injury in late January, he's giving you 14 points per game on 58% true shooting. So, like, that's really big to have him as that fourth guy for you. My concerns with the Warriors are just they are so reliant on Steph being a superhero offensively. And Jimmy alleviates some of that burden, but in the regular season, he has not consistently been like that volume second scoring option, especially on ball. He's done all the little things, screening and cutting and crashing the offensive glass, moving without the ball. But in terms of that on-ball juice, he just hasn't been super consistently productive. And then you are really relying on Pods to make shots. You're really relying on Moses Moody to make shots. I just think Steph is different because he is a one-man offense in such a unique way. But the surrounding offensive talent the Warriors have still doesn't stack up to some of these other teams in my eyes. And then I do think for them, their size can be an issue. Like, their perimeter speed, their 5-out stuff can be a real weapon. But I talked about how Denver has a nightmare matchup in Minnesota. I think the Warriors have a nightmare matchup in Denver. I just don't think they have the size to compete, to deal with Jokic, to hang in there on the glass in that matchup. Like, I think both teams would produce very well offensively, but I think that Denver would ultimately win out that battle. So that's my concern with the Warriors. Then I look at Minnesota, and I think in certain matchups they do fare really, really well, where they can just bully you on both ends. They're certainly playing their best basketball as of late. I still don't really trust their offense. And specifically, I don't really trust Julius Randle. And I just think Ant has to be very consistent as a playmaker. The shot making around him from Jaden McDaniels and Nikola Jokic and all these guys, it has to be very consistent. So, like, they're a really good two-way team, but they're one of the offenses who I trust the least in these conversations. So when I go through process of elimination, I think I land on the Clippers here. I think that the Clippers have the most complete roster of all these teams who we're talking about. I love their top 4. I think those guys all complement each other so well. And crucially, I love their depth. I think that their 5 through 10 is really, really good. They have a great combination of defensive wings. I think that Bogey has been phenomenal for them offensively. They've got a great coach. Their defense is elite. It has been all year. And this is really banking on them getting the version of Kawhi that they've gotten as of late. But in the last 12 games that Kawhi has played, they're 10-2. They have a 122 offensive rating. So they've been an elite offense when Kawhi is playing like an elite basketball player, and he's giving you 25, 7, and 4 on 63% true shooting in that stretch. So I see what you're saying, Tyler, about some of their rigidity, right? With Zoo being a true drop big, with James Harden just playing his classic style, being so ball dominant, having some real questions about his volatility as a scorer just because he cannot finish at the rim at nearly the same rate that he was a few years ago, and we've seen that be a problem in recent postseasons. I do think they have a lot of scoring to supplement some of Harden's inconsistencies, though, with Norman Powell being so elite off ball and as a shooter, with Zoo being such a great play finisher and mismatch attacker. And I do feel like defensively, I mean, they have a really nice combination of perimeter speed and athleticism and that interior rim protection and rebounding with Zoo. So I feel like they do check a lot of boxes. And when it comes to the OKC matchup, I agree. I think that Minnesota is one of the toughest matchups for OKC because they can bully them physically in a way that's pretty unique. I also think, though, that the Clippers are one of the better matchups for OKC because I do feel like in terms of perimeter defense, they can, to some extent, match OKC's guards athletically. They have a huge body big in Zoo, and I just don't think that anybody can take away Kawhi's scoring when he's the level of shot maker that we expect him to be. So it's interesting. We have different answers here. You guys both at least had the Warriors in the conversation. Do you think that I am too low on them, that I may be too concerned about some of the skill around Steph or the size issues?
No, I had a lot of the same concerns, and that's why I think OKC has so much separation over the rest of the conference. I think all of these teams are very good but very flawed.
Yeah.
And with the Warriors, like you mentioned, I also think they lack a lot of two-way depth. Like, they have a lot of offensive players and a lot of defensive players. They don't have a lot of guys who can play both ends deep into that rotation, which is something that is pretty critical for schematic versatility in the playoffs. I just think their superpower without having two-way depth is that they have like one of the ultimate all-offense guys and one of the ultimate all-defense guys, and they mesh so well that like you can have them on the floor for 36 minutes a game, and you're going to have an elite offense and an elite defense, regardless of what the other team's doing. And I think that's kind of my big takeaway. I would say my biggest difference with you isn't necessarily the way. I feel like we're on a similar level with the Warriors. I just think I'm a little bit more concerned with the Clippers. I think with the way Kawhi's looked, I was almost ready to just shoe them in as number 2. Like, I almost got there because when he's this level, he's playing like a top 10 player. And they were already a really, really good team before he even existed. So the Clippers are a very, very good team. I think most notably in the OKC matchup, and really any playoff matchup they'll run into in the West, I think the Chris Dunn variable really, really worries me because they had 2 very bad games against the Lakers where the Lakers just said, we are not going to acknowledge Chris Dunn at all. And Chris Dunn was just, he shot like 5 threes in the fourth quarter, didn't make a single one, and they lost the game with like 98 points in 4 quarters or something like that. That really concerns me because you'll get the same thing with Ben Simmons off the bench too if he's playing rotation minutes. I think having a bunch of non-shooters with a non-shooting big can really muck up things. Like, I'm thinking of a Minnesota matchup. Rudy Gobert is not spaced at all. He's just parked in the paint. And I think Kawhi can still get his offense if you have that situation. It's the other guys I'm worried about. Norman Powell balances that three-point shooting with slashing really well. I think in a Minnesota series, he's not slashing nearly as much. I think Harden can't get to that floater as much, and now he's really volatile where it's like, I need to hit my pull-up 3 or I'm just not a scoring presence. I think that's my main concern with the Clippers. I think the Bogey edition has been a lot better than maybe I gave it credit for initially. Because in my head, I was still thinking, like, do they have to give playoff minutes to Amir Coffey? Hopefully not, because I don't view him as a playoff player at all. And the other thing is they don't have a reliable backup big. So I think Zoo's going to be having to play like 39, 40 minutes a game. And I really think teams are just going to put him in pick and roll. And he's one of the best defenders in the league, but he's stuck to one coverage. He is stuck to one coverage. So you go against the Warriors. You go get you can't drop against Anthony Edwards. What do you do to guard an Anthony Edwards pick and roll over and over and over again? I just think the Clippers have a few exploitable issues that make me a little bit lower on them than you are.
Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying, and I think specifically the concern of like who is that 5th starter, if it's Chris Dunn or if it's Derrick Jones Jr. Either way, you're getting very similar pros and very similar cons with the high-level perimeter defense and then with obviously the just offensive negatives and the fact that like both of them are guys who teams are going to consistently test as three-point shooters, and they're probably right to do so. I do have a lot of faith in the collective offense around them, though. But one concern I would have with the Clippers is the offense has been elite as of late, in large part because Kawhi is playing his best basketball, but also because James Harden is playing his best basketball in this recent stretch. And I just don't have the most faith in him against a hyper-athletic playoff defense, against a team that does have that high-level rim defense where he's not going to be able to finish. And then you are talking about him being super reliant on the pull-up 3. And like, we've seen the highs and the lows, right? We've seen the 6-point playoff games and we've seen the 30-point playoff games, but they don't need him to be super consistent, but they do need him to be somewhat consistent. So I do think that there are pros and cons with all of these teams for sure. Logan, anything you want to say here?
I just still think you're a little bit lower on the Warriors than I am right now. I'm not as concerned about the role players. And that largely has to do, one, with the introduction of Jimmy Butler because of how he shifted the roles for them, right? You were talking about B-pods slipping into an easier role for him, right? Moody has done the same thing. It simplifies their jobs, but it's also the fact that I still believe in Jimmy Butler as one of those guys when it comes playoff time that I want. So you're talking about the concerns and the burden of them scoring the basketball. Yeah, I think that's a concern to have just with how sporadic the shooting can be with Golden State, right? Like it's kind of a hit or miss every night with the supporting cast, but I trust Jimmy to pull his weight. I trust Jimmy and Dre to manufacture great looks for Steph all series long. I think Steph is at a level, a really high level that I'm confident in translating into the playoffs. I think my biggest concern is just the size thing, which I think just has to be in the back of your mind, right? Like, is Quentin Post going to be playable and meaningful, right? He doesn't have to give you 20 minutes a night, but is he going to be good for those 16 or 12 that he gives you? Are they going to be able to trot Dre out there for a small ball 5 look in some of these matchups that they might run into, right? Against the Clippers, if it's a big zoo, if it's Memphis, even hypothetically, right? If it was a Zach Edey or a Triple J, right? You wonder if some of those looks are viable in the playoffs, but I'm not as concerned with the scoring aspects, and with some of the concerns you guys are talking about with the Clippers, I just think I have a few more things that I'm worried about with LA. Kawhi's health and Harden being consistent are probably the two at the forefront for LA.
And this comes back to what I said initially about the matchup thing, because as you guys are both talking, I'm almost thinking like, would I favor the Clippers over the Warriors in a series because of the size, because of the defensive versatility, because the Warriors probably can't take advantage of Chris Dunn without an elite.
Yeah, like you were talking about earlier. Exactly.
That makes it so tough because I think the Warriors are better against most teams, but then I'm like, in this specific matchup, I feel like I prefer the Clippers. It's tough, man. It's really tough. One thing that you also talked about, Carson, that I forgot to hit on in my initial segment was the Warriors and the Timberwolves are two teams I immediately clinged on to because they're both peaking at the perfect time, and I guess this also applies to the Clippers. One of those teams to me is going to be like last year's Mavs. Because last year's Mavs, it was like post-deadline, they were the best team in the West. And we all kind of like, were like, is it March? Is it a little bit fake? And then it carried right into the playoffs. And I think the Warriors being, like you said, 19-2 with Steph and Jimmy in the lineup is something that's just going to go straight into the playoffs. And it's like, this is the level they're at. Ignore everything before the trade deadline. So yeah, I think that applies to the Timberwolves. It applies to the Clippers. It applies to the Warriors. And on the inverse, like you said, the Grizzlies are falling off at the worst possible time. So that could also carry into the playoffs as well. So yeah, I think it sounds to me like all of our top three, like I don't remember if Logan had the Clippers as his third team, but it seems to me like all of our 2 through 4 is some variation of Warriors, Wolves, Clippers. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, that's probably where I'm at.
I don't know. I might be holding on a little longer
not a big Wolves guy.
To the Nuggets. And I don't know what to do with the Lakers. Like I said, like they just haven't been playing good basketball, but I see the ceiling, and it's so hard to know what to do with Luka because like we're not just looking at like a fluky 12-game sample now. It's not a full season, but this is 25 games that he just has not been the player you expect him to be, and it's been the same issues recurring in LA, and it hasn't gotten better. But then I think about what Luka and LeBron can do together to a defense if they max it out. Nobody is built to guard both of those dudes on the floor at the same time. They are 2 all-time mismatch stackers. They are 2 all-time playmakers. They have shooting around them. Austin Reeves has been phenomenal offensively this season. And it's just like, can they find the right combinations of lineups? Can they find the right minute distribution where they can limit their perimeter defensive issues? Because you're getting enough offense with LeBron and Luka on the floor. You don't need those two and Austin Reeves. Like, I think the minute stagger is going to be a huge thing. And then it's, we need great minutes from DFS. We need great minutes from Gabe Vincent, who I do think are good role players, especially DFS, I think has been phenomenal this year. but they haven't found that balance yet. So that's why I feel so conflicted about them. The ceiling to floor difference with them is so massive, and it's a lot to have to figure out with this little time left. But then it's like, okay, it's Luka and LeBron, though. Who's better set up to figure it out? That's why I just can't exclude them from these conversations. I'm not as high on the Timberwolves. I'm not. I still think the offensive configuration around Ant is a little bit weird. And they found a lot of offensive success with those small ball lineups as of late, especially in the minutes without Gobert on the floor. And Julius Randle has been playing really well as of late. And they've been a very efficient three-point shooting team this year. I just worry some about Randle's offensive process in the playoffs. What if his shot making breaks down? Basically all the things that we've seen previously, right? Can you test him as a playmaker, and does he fall apart? And then Ant as a playmaker, I'm also conflicted about, because you see the high highs where it's like there are games where he is just consistently diagnosing whatever coverage is thrown at him.
I think he's gotten a lot better this year.
And then there are games where he won't pass the ball to anybody, Logan. There are games where he certainly won't hit Rudy Gobert off the roll.
I don't blame the guy. I wouldn't be passing the bear to Gobert either, man.
But if he's open off the roll, you got to hit him, man.
No,
and then Gobert does
fumble
concern
the ball
me
and turn
offensively.
it over. I'm going to just shoot a contested midi.
Like, obviously, the Nuggets were not the team to do it, but you think about what they tried guarding Gobert with a wing where you can switch everything out of pick and roll and feel like maybe he's not going to punish us. He's not going to do it with mismatch stacking. Maybe he does it on the glass, though, like he did against Denver. But, like, Gobert's offensive limitations. We'll see what their starting lineup is come playoffs, but Conley cannot score inside the arc anymore, so he's very inconsistent. How much of a burden are you asking him to carry as a playmaker and as a shooter? I do have a lot of questions about them still.
Let me ask you this, though. Which teams do you look at in the Western Conference playoff picture where you're like, they can exploit Minnesota's offensive weaknesses besides OKC?
I think that the Clippers can do it decently well. And then
but
I
what
trust
do you
the
do?
Clippers
Like, what do you
offense
do?
more.
What do you do with Zubats having to drop against an Ant pick and roll? Because Ant's hitting like 41% of his pull-up threes.
Yeah, it's true. It's a problem when Ant is just an absolute god-tier pull-up shooter for sure. I wonder if they might try some of what I was just mentioning, where, like, what if you put Kawhi on Rudy and you switch everything out of pick and roll? Like, that's a problem on the glass, but that's a good answer to Ant pick and roll.
That's where I was going to go with that. But then it's like, who is Zoo guarding? He can't guard Randall. He can't guard McDaniels.
I think you put him on McDaniels.
Now he's spaced, though.
That's true. Well, this is the exact problem that the Nuggets just ran into, right? Where they're getting crushed on the offensive glass because Jokic isn't on the inside. Like, do they have a great answer? No, probably not. But I think that they do have decent answers there. And any team that is going to try that strategy, I think that you're roaming off of McDaniels. I just think he's the least of an offensive threat on the floor. It's interesting, man. I mean,
I just think the Wolves are such an interesting construction where it's like their front court is huge. Their front court is so big. And if Edwards is just like this 40% pull-up three-point shooter, like he has been from start to finish this season, I feel like there aren't many ways. Like, that's just such a crazy variable to have to defend in the playoffs. Like, there's not. For sure. I almost think maybe the Warriors have the best facilities to defend that team because they'll get overwhelmed by the size, but they're comfortable just like switching and making the Wolves play one-on-one. I don't know. I can't wait for the playoffs. I can't wait for the playoffs.
I feel like that's the give and take with any team against Minnesota. The teams that are best set up to switch are the teams that are probably going to get brutalized on the glass because, like, I think the Warriors get destroyed on the glass in that series. So I would say my second team is the Clippers right now. I've been a fan of what they've been doing throughout this year, but it's kind of like the other teams who I viewed on the same level or slightly above them. I've just gotten more and more concerned about that being really Denver and the Lakers. But Denver is one of the hardest because their defense is the worst of any that we're talking about. But I think that their offense probably should be the best. And I know that you have the concerns about, okay, what happens when people deploy the strategy that we saw from the Kings and the Celtics and the Lakers, where you are literally doubling Jokic off ball. You're fronting him with a wing. You have a big and backline help the entire time. You're just doing everything you can to limit his touches and daring guys around him to make shots. I think Aaron Gordon's development as a shooter is so pivotal to punishing teams for doing that because they didn't have him in a couple of those games when they were seeing that coverage. And if you turn those Russ minutes into Aaron Gordon minutes, and Aaron Gordon has been a consistent 40+% three-point shooter this year, I think it becomes a lot less viable for a defense to just ignore that guy. And then you have Jokic, who like solves anything that you throw at him, and there are more counters to teams doing that, right? You have him handle more, run more inverted pick and roll. So that's just like such a superpower, but then they have a major red flag on the other end. So you could tell me any of those teams that we just debated, and I'd hear you out. I would not hear out of Houston case. I probably wouldn't hear out of Memphis case, but any of the others I do think make their compelling arguments.
I'm with you. I think Houston and Memphis are my bottom two. Logan, are those your bottom two? Who are your bottom two of the top 8?
No, it's definitely Memphis and Houston. I got a new cop-out answer, though, guys. Let's just take the 3 and 6 seed and the 7 seed. Let's just say that's our second-best team out west.
Collectively?
Because that's the most likely to get to the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah.
If these were the playoff matchups today, just real quick, you would have Rockets-Timberwolves taking the Timberwolves there.
T-Wolves.
Yeah.
You would have Nuggets-Grizzlies taking the Nuggets there.
Yep.
And then you would have Lakers-Warriors.
Which is...
Dubs.
That's a series.
That's a series, man.
That's a series.
I think so much of that battle just hinges on what level is Luke at offensively.
And Steph.
And what level are the Warriors role players at. And Steph, that is a question because, like, Steph has been a
well, I just mean he still
incredible
does have
top
that,
5 player for 20
he
something
still
games.
does have that superhuman burden on his shoulders where if he's not giving you 30 or he's not giving you 28, it's like you're working from a disadvantage.
You know
and
what
he wasn't able to consistently do that earlier in the year. And his on-ball efficiency hasn't been the same this year. But then it's like, for the last 20-plus games, did Jimmy just save his life? Because he's looked like that top 5 level Steph Curry.
You know what I think is absolutely hilarious about this playoff setup? The reason I asked if you guys so we all have the Rockets and the Grizzlies as our bottom 2 of the top 8. There's a very real possibility that that's the first round matchup. So one of them gets to the second round.
Pissed.
So one of them gets to the second round, and one of these, like 3 of these other teams, all get first round exits.
Because right now, I just talked about the Clippers as probably my number 2 team. They're drawing OKC first round if these standings were to stay.
That's a loss.
That's a loss. That's a loss. They can give them a hard-fought 6, but that's a loss. Like,
yeah.
It's crazy how bunched up the standings all are and how close these teams all are. But while we're talking about some of these teams who maybe aren't the highest in the standings, but we think have that real playoff potential, let's just open up this whole conversation. Logan, I'll start with you here. Who do you think is the most underrated team now that we are on the brink of the playoffs?
I think it's Minnesota. I think Minnesota has a real chance to go to the Western Conference Finals. Like, when I think about underrated, I think about a team that has the opportunity to go on a big run. And when I think of a big run, I think it's got to be the Western Conference Finals or it's got to be the Eastern Conference Finals. And when I look at the teams in the East, like maybe Indiana is the other cheeky pick where I could see them doing something flukish in the Eastern Conference if their offense is just ripping. Like, I could see that again. The Knicks, I think, are too flawed defensively. And, like, you could say that of Indiana, but I think it's a bigger problem with New York. And then I think that they're maybe getting overrated. Cleveland's too much of a big shot to be an underdog anymore. And so when I get down to it, I think it would be Minnesota or Indiana. The reason I go with Minnesota is kind of what Tyler was alluding to earlier. I think Anthony Edwards is one of those guys that you just cannot game plan for. You need to go to church and pray that you don't have to play him. Like, that's the best argument against him. If you don't have a defensive guy that can hold him, that can stay in front of him and keep him from getting to the rim, he's going to abuse you. This year he's been one of the best jump shooters in a single season in NBA history. I've regurgitated this stat a few times when we're talking about Ant, but it's such a ridiculous stat. He's one of 4 players in NBA history to average 10 three-pointers attempted per game on 40% from behind the arc. That list includes Steph Curry, Klay Thompson, Damian Lillard, and now 2025 Anthony Edwards. Like, those are elite jump shooters, and so I'm getting one of the best athletes on the planet, one of the best jump shooters on the planet right now. I'm getting a really good defense behind him with really good depth. And like, Carson, you were talking earlier about how clunky it is and how weird it is. And don't get me wrong, I don't like betting on Rudy Gobert. I don't like betting on the variable that is Julius Randle, but they seem to have been figuring out this schematic fit post All-Star break. I've liked how they've looked a lot better down this stretch of the season. I really like their depth. I like their surrounding shooting and talent outside of those guys. And so I just need Julius Randle to not shit his pants, and I think Minnesota's got a real chance of doing some damage, especially if they get that 7 seed. If they get that 7 seed and they can knock off Houston, not that that's going to be a cakewalk. I think Houston's going to be a hard out no matter who they draw. Their offense might be glaringly flawed, but they're a feisty team. Like, they're not going to go down without a fight. I think that's going to be a really hard-fought battle, but I would expect Minnesota to win. And then when we're looking past that 3-6, if they were to get, who is that, Memphis
Denver.
or Denver?
It'd be Denver and Memphis.
If they got Denver, I would take Minnesota.
Yeah.
If they got Memphis, I would take Minnesota. And so just how it's falling into place, I never gave up on Minnesota. I was definitely low on them at certain points, but I never gave up on them, and I think they're the best answer for this question. I think they're the team with the best chance to go on another surprise run in back-to-back years. A lot of it hinges on my faith in Anthony Edwards, but I like Minnesota a lot.
Yeah, I think Minnesota's. I think right if it stacked up right now, they'd be my pick for the Western Conference Finals. And what's funny is my two answers for this question were the Timberwolves and the Pacers. So I won't even go any further than what you just said. Besides, I didn't pick the Pacers just because I think Cavs-Celtics Conference Finals is almost a shoo-in.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I'm not going to pick a team from the East because I think the Pacers are going to make the second round and then face the Cavs. And it is what it is. But yeah, out West, I agree. I think it's Minnesota, and I think if the playoffs started right now, they'd make another Conference Finals.
Yeah, things are definitely shaking up in the standings just as they would hope right now. Let me ask you guys something. Who do you want to be that fifth starter in the playoffs? Like, I know it's consistently been Conley. Do you think there's a chance that they move off of him and go with Nikola Alexander Walker, who's just been
He's
phenomenal?
been balling. Yeah, I don't think that's a bad answer.
It's hard because you're losing a little bit of just offensive stability and
I was
IQ,
going to say, that's
the
the exact
playmaking,
word.
the second
You need
side.
You need that
playmaking,
stabilizing force, it feels like, with Ant sometimes, just because you don't want him
he just can't score.
overburdened.
Mike Conley can't score anymore.
I think it's matchup dependent. I think like there's situations where you need Conley's decision making, but there's also situations where you need the extra size defensively, and just even size. Like Nikola Alexander Walker's kind of a sneaky good driver. He puts like decent pressure on the rim. He does a little bit of slashing. So I think it's just matchup dependent. Like I think against a team like I'm trying to think of a good example. Golden State. I think Golden State's a Conley matchup. I think that's a Conley matchup because I think you put him on Podziemski, and then you Golden State's gonna be flying all over the court. You want that extra passer.
Yeah.
But I think a team where you would rather have Alexander Walker is maybe the Clippers, so you can throw him on Harden or something like that. I don't know. Or you definitely want him on the floor against Shai. You definitely want him on the floor against Shai. So yeah, I think it's just matchup dependent.
I would agree with that. I think that Nikola Alexander Walker has been playing the better basketball really this entire season, but especially as of late. But like, there is just that veteran IQ and offensive poise that I do get with Mike Conley that I think is very valuable in certain matchups, especially when it's really the offense that I'm more worried about. But when I just think about the defensive wrecking ball that you can be with Nikola Alexander Walker, Jaden McDaniels starting with Ant, with Gobert as your rim protector. Like, there's just so much defensive talent and athleticism on the floor. So I am going to go with the Pacers, just because we already talked about all these Western Conference teams already. So I'm going to show love to Indiana because I think that they have been severely underrated for the team that they've been for 3/4 of the season now. Like, on November 22nd, the Pacers lost their 5th game in their last 6 games. Hallie had been dealing with the back injury. He was slumping brutally. The offense was totally mediocre. The defense was not good. Like, it was a disastrous start to the season. Since that point, that day in late November, the Pacers are 36-17 when Hallie plays. They have a top 5 offensive rating in games that he plays. He is giving you 20 points per game, 9.5 assists on 65% true shooting with 1.6 turnovers. It's one of the most efficient offensive stretches of basketball for this long, 60 games, that you will ever see. So the offense is back to its elite form. We know that Hallie is one of the most brilliant offensive engines, the best decision maker in basketball, in my opinion, one of the best pull-up shooters, which he's gotten back to that level. I think the underrated story with Indiana, though, is that since that same point in late November, they're 11th in defensive rating. I think they've been a significantly better defensive team than last year when they were 24th in defensive rating. Miles Turner has been slightly better as a rim protector. I think Siakam has taken a real step up defensively this season. I think that even Hallie has been a bit more active defensively. He's averaging an extra deflection per game compared to last year. So in terms of being a connected team defense, they've improved by a good bit. They still have their limitations there, but like going from bad to above average is a meaningful improvement. And I think one of their superpowers last year, of course, was their depth, the contributions that they were getting from their bench, their ability to cycle through guys and not lose value, where they can play at this crazy pace and go 9-10 deep and feel like you're getting good minutes from all those guys. Their depth is even better than last year. Benedict Mathurin being available now for this playoff run when he wasn't last year, and he's such a dynamic scoring talent. Jarris Walker having grown into a rotation guy at least. I don't know how much he'll play in the playoffs, but I do think his defensive skill set is very valuable. So I think that this is just a better team than last year. I think that Hallie is playing significantly better than he was going into the playoffs last year. They're healthier, they're deeper, they're better defensively. The offense is still elite. The problem, of course, is that like the top of the East, just those top two teams are way better. Well, Boston was excellent last year, but there wasn't another team like that, and that's why the Pacers were able to make the conference finals. You're headed towards a second-round matchup with Cleveland. They could make that a fun 6 games. I mean, that's what's always so fun about Indiana is they might just be able to outrun and gun you in any individual game. Their offense is that potent, but I just don't think they have high-end enough defensive personnel to really do anything to disturb Cleveland's offense, which is so elite, and Cleveland's just a more talented basketball team. So I can't see them winning that matchup, but I can see them like making it a relatively good series. And when you think about what the discourse was with the Pacers early in the year, it's like everybody was dancing on their grave. Everybody hates Hallie for some reason, so everybody was making fun of him. And now you're looking at 3/4 of the year, they've been one of the best teams in basketball, and nobody's talking about it. And even if it is only winning 1 series this year, you win 3 playoff series in 2 years, like, that's an accomplishment, man. You know, that's really a testament to the fact that last year wasn't a fluke. Were there some fortunate aspects of it? Absolutely. But you think about, like, the Hawks in 2021, and they don't win a single playoff series after that point. Like, I really, really think the Pacers are going to win a series this year, and I do think that they're underrated.
Agreed. Absolutely agree.
Shout out. Logan, anything you want to say about the Pacers? You called them the cheeky pick. Call me cheeky. Call me a cheeky bastard. I want him.
I just like Tyrese Halliburton, man.
And you love Siakam.
Sweet, bro. I
love Siakam too.
Siakam's underrated.
So do I.
I just love the way they fly up and down the floor. They've got such a good identity. All their players fit their identity. Like, the Pacers are one of the most fun teams in basketball. Yeah. I think to just watch.
Exactly.
Also, you didn't even mention Aaron Nesmith, who's currently 50-40-90 while being an elite wing defender.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, they got some hoopers.
And his return has been so big for them, and I think really important to their defense improving like it has. Like, really good role players, 2 stars who I love. And Logan, you said it, that's another thing that I just love about Indiana. They're just one of the best watches in the league. And come playoffs, like, I'm very excited to watch hopefully 10+ games of postseason Pacers basketball because it's just a joyful experience. The finals are here, and the only thing for sure is it's the last time to bet on college basketball this season. It's been an amazing ride to get here, full of the unexpected happening. Maybe there will be more. Get in on all the action, expected and unexpected, with DraftKings Sportsbook. With live betting, exclusive content, promos, and parlays, DraftKings is the ultimate college basketball destination for March.
Ready to make your first bet? Check out the matchups and pick a team to win. It's that simple. And if it's your first time, here's something special just for you. New customers bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets instantly.
Bet the unexpected with DraftKings Sportsbook. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code NERDS. That's code NERDS for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours. But we're talking about these underrated teams and these teams out west that are fighting for the number 2 spot. There's a top dog out west that is way, way, way ahead of everybody else in the standings and is having a historic season. And that is the team that I think we've all viewed is the top dog in the West as a given, and that's the Oklahoma City Thunder. Tyler, where does this OKC team rank in your eyes among the best regular season teams that we've ever seen.
Yeah, when you gave me this question, my mind went to 3 spots. First, it was usually when you have a team this good, like the historic net rating, the chance to win 70 games, I think typically those teams are doing something transcendent. Like you look at the Showtime Lakers with their pace. You look at what Golden State did with the motion and the 3-point shooting. Houston's 5 out or 4 out, 1 in, whatever you want to call it, with the amount of threes they were taking to win 65 games. I think it's super impressive that OKC is doing what they're doing without really doing anything transcendent. They're just good. They're just super, super good on both ends of the floor.
You don't think the defense qualifies just with how insane their speed is? And obviously now they have the 2 bigs, but
yeah,
they've done some very distinct things defensively.
The closest thing to being transcendent would be like the J-Dub at the 5 stuff, or like the Kenrich at the 5 stuff. I think because they are probably the fastest defensive team ever, and the way they force turnovers. But I guess I'm looking at it from more of an approach standpoint. When they get on the court, there's no like thing you point to with their scheme where it's like, we haven't seen that before. I feel like they just are just so good at what they want to do. The other factor is I think the league is the most competitive it's ever been right now. Like you look at the 96 Bulls, for example, expansion. And I think right now, to be doing what they're doing right now is just so much more impressive than if they did it in a watered down league. Although there are teams tanking and things like that, but I do think this is the most competitive the league's ever been. And the third factor is the injuries. They've missed, like, I don't know who tweeted this. It might have actually been you. I don't know who it was. But the 92 missed games between their starting 5. And it's like, yeah, I think when you take into those 3 things into account, you take into account the historical net rating, the win total, the all-time great engine in Shai, which we'll talk about. I think you have to give them a case for number 1. You have to. I don't think you can look at every team in history and be like, this OKC team does not have an argument to be the best regular season team ever.
They 100% have an argument there. The only 2 teams I wrote down were the 96 to 97 Bulls and then the 2015 to 2019 Dubs. And I don't know, man. I don't know what people can say to like hate on the Thunder now, like how they haven't proven themselves. It seems like this year, man, it's been a whole like prove it to the league kind of thing for Oklahoma City. It's like, oh, are they going to prove themselves? Are they going to prove themselves? We're waiting for this like fairy tale to end. It's not a fairy tale. It's real. It's just what Oklahoma City does on a nightly basis. And the really remarkable thing about this is I think something else you tweeted out, Carson, just how young these guys are to be doing this. It's such a, in an early stage of their development. That's what's most impressive to me is it's like, this is the beginning. Like, some of these guys haven't even come close to their final form yet. Like, Chet Holmgren, I think is going to step in and be a much better offensive player at his apex, right? He's a good offensive player right now. I think he's going to be a problem on a nightly basis in the future. I think Jalen Williams is going to be even better. That's J-Dub. I think he's going to grow and be a more reliable offensive player. I think that some of the other younger guys, if it's a Kason Wallace, if it's an Aaron Wiggins, if it's Nikola Jokic, if it's any of the 7 first-round picks, I just think that where they're at is already at an all-time regular season level, but they are they're still ascending. Like, even if they don't win the championship this year, which I think would be a little bit of a disappointment after such a historic regular season, I think this team is still even primed to get better, where we could be talking, like how I just mentioned the 2015 to 2019 Warriors, this could just be a collective stretch where we say Oklahoma City ran the regular season from 2025 to, I don't know, man, 2030. But yeah, I think that there's nothing anyone should be able to say to denigrate how great this team is. I think they're one of the all-time great regular season teams ever. I'd also throw in, I think, the early 2000s Lakers when they were locked in. Maybe like the early 80s Sixers or a team like that. But I think a lot of the context with those teams is playoffs included. If we're just looking at regular season, I think they're probably top 5.
Yeah, I would make a distinction between the two because there are certain teams who I consider among the greatest ever, period, point blank, who didn't have dominant regular seasons. Really, there's one, and that would be the 2001 Lakers, who just absolutely obliterated the playoff field, but were a 56-win regular season teams. But there are others, like Logan, you mentioned the 83 Sixers, great regular season team, 65 wins. They really set themselves apart in the playoffs when they almost go fo, as Moses promised, and they only lose one game. So, like, there are some examples of those. I'm pretending we don't know what happens in the playoffs, okay? So I'm just looking at your regular season resume, because that's all we have with this OKC team right now, and doing that, like Tyler said, I think that they have a legitimate case as the best ever. They are tied for first all-time in net rating, so that's a big box to check. They could easily win 70 games. They haven't done it yet, but they could become just the third team ever to achieve that feat. And the key that Tyler mentioned, they are doing that with way worse injury luck than any other team with comparable historic success. You mentioned that the Thunder have already had their starters miss 92 games. A majority of those coming from Chet Holmgren, who is their second best player, so that's extra crucial. Then another 20-something of them coming from Isaiah Hartenstein, who is their fourth best player, and that left them for a stretch where they did not have one of their top two bigs, and so they were having to do the J-Dub stuff at the 5. So, like, those have been some really key players who they've missed. But just in terms of the raw number, 92 missed games by starters, nobody else to be in the top 10 in NBA history in net rating in a single season comes close to that. The average number of games missed by starters for those other top 10 teams by net rating is 39.8. So the Thunder are way over double that. And again, the season isn't over yet. I think that one of the key aspects of their case as one of the greatest regular season teams ever is that they have some of the greatest depth that we've ever seen. And that's how you go 40-8 without Chet, and 16-6 without Hartenstein, and 11-0 without J-Dub. When they're fully healthy, their bench is Cason Wallace, Alex Caruso, Isaiah Joe, Aaron Wiggins, Jalen Williams. Like, just think about that. And think about how many benches in NBA history compare to that. There's very few.
Would y'all take them or the Nets starting 5 in a 7-game series?
Thunder bench.
Yeah.
I'd take the Thunder bench.
What if I could just get Cam Johnson on the Thunder and then it wouldn't be a conversation? I mean, defensively, like, that OKC bench is legitimately
That's just nuts.
nasty.
Like, that is legitimately better than, I mean, like
that's a top 10 defense.
They're bottom dwellers, but, like, that bench is better than some starting 5s.
Yeah. I mean, the playmaking's a little bit.
No, they have some issues in terms of offensive creation for sure, but defensively, they're nasty, they're athletic. It's a good shooting lineup. You can play 5 out with that group. And, like, that's their bench, man. And those are guys who they can mix and match, and they have such crazy lineup versatility, which is another insane thing about this team. We've just seen how phenomenal the fit with Chet and Ihart has been, how great the two big looks have been. They are one of the greatest defenses we've ever seen. They're 4th this century in relative defensive rating. That's without Chet, their best defensive player, for more than half the year. There are a number of dudes I wish I could get on an all-defense team. Like, Chet could have been D-Ploy if he had stayed healthy. Jalen Williams, I think, should be first-team all-defense. Lou Dort should probably be second-team all-defense. Cason Wallace, I don't think I'm going to have a spot for when I map it out, but he'd be third-team all-defense if I could. Caruso, if he were to meet the 65 games, he'd make an all-defense case. Like, I've said consistently, it's the best perimeter defense that we've ever seen. It's the deepest group of high-end perimeter defensive talent. Their speed is like nothing we've ever seen. Their activity and ability to force turnovers is unparalleled in the modern NBA. And then they also have this top-tier rim protector, and they can have one of the best rim protecting lineups in basketball with 2 high-end rim protecting bigs, and their aggregate rim protection from all their wings is crazy. So, like, I think when all is said and done, after we see it in a playoff run, we'll consider this the best defense since the 2004 Pistons, and they're a top 3 offense. So, like, it's a historic defense. It's an elite offense. They have historically great depth. They have a historically great regular season from their best player. And then just, like, a couple of fun facts, a couple ways in which they've made history. They have the best record ever versus the opposing conference. They have 1 loss against the Eastern Conference this year. We've never seen that in NBA history. They've also been the best team against the best competition. They're 11-4 versus teams expected to win 50-plus games this year. So, like, they're checking every single box for a historic team. And I think, like you said, Tyler, it's harder to win 70 games today than it was in 1996 specifically, I would say, because you did have some watered down talent because of expansion. Now, the counter to that people will bring up is today you have some tanking teams, and there's no denying that. That is true. But there aren't more like legitimately bad teams in the NBA today than there were in 1996. And I think you also have to consider that, yeah, you have your bottom tier that's tanking. You also have 13 teams in the West this year who were legitimately trying to make a playoff push. Like when the season started, that would have been their goal. So that's a rare thing. And the one more point that I would bring up, and the reason that like I wasn't sure when we'd see another team push for 70 wins, is 3-point shooting variance. Like it is harder to win almost 90% of your games when in any single outcome, a team might just make 10 more threes than you. They get super hot, you get super cold. That's a bigger swing factor than you ever had before teams were shooting threes at this volume. There's just more variance in individual games, and still they are blowing teams out night after night, and they are barely losing. So I would say that they're a top 5 regular season team of all time. I'd have the 96 Bulls. I'd have the 2016 Warriors. I mean, those are just the 2 teams with the best records ever. I would have the 2017 Warriors, even though they didn't win 70, they won 67. Their net rating is top 5 all time. To me, that is the greatest team ever. And they did go 16-4 without KD, so they had to overcome some of the injury adversity as well to a top 3 player in the league, and they were still utterly dominant. And then, not to be boring, but like I think the 97 Bulls are also probably in this top 5. They were 3rd all-time in net rating. They went 21-6 without Rodman that year. And then the other team I would throw in the mix would be the 72 Lakers, who go 69-13, have the 33-game win streak that's never been matched. But I think I'd leave them out and have them 6th, and I'd have the Thunder in the top 5 with just those couple of Bulls and Warriors teams.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what to make of the number 1 net rating of all time thing. I'm kind of back and forth on it because what you said about the 3 ball making things more volatile, I also think that makes it a lot easier to create separation on the scoreboard. Like when you look at the top net rating teams of all time, you'll see like the 2021 Jazz, you'll see the
2024 Celtics are top 5.
Right,
so I
it's
agree.
all of these 3-point shooting teams. So I think that juices the net rating a little bit. But I also think that's counteracted by the injury thing. And one thing that I think a lot of people overlook, because it seems so negligible, is that on the 96 Bulls, Jordan played all 82. Shai's missed 3 games. And that might sound like such a negligible thing, but if you just, it was 3 games against bad teams. So if you just get Shai for those 3 games and you get like this plus 30 net rating, all of a sudden OKC is the clear number 1. So it's really interesting to think about both perspectives. The way I kind of did my final ranking was I only used like one installment of the same team. So like the 96 and 97 Bulls to me were kind of one team because it was the same team again. So when I did my ranking, I did kind of bake in the fact that some teams did it again. So if the Thunder go in and have this exact same season again, then I'm more willing to call them number 1. But the final list I landed on, I had them 4th. I had them 4th just based off of this season and then how good they already were last year. My number 1, I'm thinking, is the Warriors. And honestly, it's a 3-year stretch, 15-17. Like, they were just unbeatable in the regular season. I think my number 2 team is the Bulls, 96-97. And my 3rd team is one that you guys actually didn't bring up at all. The 71-72 Bucks with Oscar and Kareem. They had, in 71, they had a plus 11 net rating, and in 72, they had a plus 10 net rating.
And they win 66 and 63 games.
Yeah, and they were just like, they were so elite on offense and defense. They had the best player in the world by a landslide at the time. Yeah, I think that'd be my pick. But then the Thunder are my 4.
That's a great choice. And honestly, I think that the 71 Bucks might be a top 5 team of all time. They're at least totally in that conversation because the playoff run, they just obliterate the competition. So that's a great shout as well. And I do think if you're looking at the multiple year stretches, then I think all those teams have to have an edge over the Thunder. And bringing up the Bucks, that is a great shout. But they're in those sort of historic conversations no matter what. And by the way, I think you made a great point with the net rating. I think that there are 2 sides to it. The net ratings are juiced a little bit by the increased 3-point volume. But the difficulty of winning every single regular season game is increased by that same volatility that comes with the 3 ball. So I'm so excited to see what they do in the playoffs. And obviously, like, listen, Nobody is calling the Thunder a top 10 team of all time right now. At least I'll speak for myself. I'm not doing that. We're just talking about the regular season. Do they have the potential to be that? Yes. Do they also have the potential to not win the title this year? Absolutely. Because the Boston Celtics are every bit as good as the Thunder. And like those teams to me, it's basically a toss-up going into a series between the two of them. But it's a historic regular season from the team. And it's a historic regular season from one Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. We've done so much glazing of him on this show, but we got to bring you in, Tyler, to become a part of it. We've already had some of the historic conversations with him, but we haven't specifically had this one. So I want your take on this first. Where does SGA's scoring peak that he's at right now rank all time among guards?
Yes. If we're just going, I'm still like waiting to see it in the playoffs, so I don't want to get too crazy with it. I think right now I would go fourth based off of not seeing the playoffs yet. And the three I'd have ahead of him are Jordan, Steph, Kobe. And then I'd go Shai fourth, and then probably Harden fit. Oh, actually, because then how do I throw Jerry West into that? Because Jerry West has like the best playoff scoring numbers ever, but then I don't even know what to do with that. So I'm just gonna say like four to 7 range for now. Okay. But if what happens in the what I expect to happen in the playoffs is what happens, I think you could say Shai stacks up against any guard ever not named Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan's on the absolute island where no one's touching him. Like it's just no one, probably not in our lifetimes. No one's touching that. But below that, I think Shai stacks up with anyone depending on what we see in the playoffs. Like because I think just regular season, I think Steph's up there with MJ, but I don't think Steph rivals MJ in the playoffs as a regular season or as a scorer. As a playoff scorer. So I think Steph gets dropped down to this next group. But Shai could get to that height, like Steph's height as a playoff scorer. So yeah, I'm saying hesitant, going like 4 or 5 range. Aggressive, I think anyone not named MJ, you could stack Shai up against and he might win.
I'm pretty close to that. I don't think Steph is close to MJ. I think MJ is on an island by himself in any context. 10 times, maybe 11, straight scoring titles in the playoffs, something ridiculous like that, man.
It's unfathomable. I mean, he's 32.5 points per game in Chicago on like plus 4.5% relative true shooting, and then in the playoffs, he's 33.5 on MJ's still like plus 4% true shooting relative to the league average. It's like, how is that guy real?
MJ's the GOAT. I got Steph 2. The reason I went with Steph 2 right now is because the volatility and the scoring explosions, I think because of SGA's reliance on inside the three-point line, just Steph has more of that ability to explode for a 50-piece or a 60-piece when you might need it. I did have Kobe just out of respect for Kobe, but I'm okay with putting him 4 already. I would debate between him and Kobe. It was really close between them. And I don't think I need to see it in the playoffs, Tyler. And the only reason I say that is not that I'm saying that it doesn't matter what SGA does in the playoffs this year, because it very much does, but I'm just so confident in it translating that I don't think I necessarily need to see it because I'm so confident in what I'm getting with SGA. So the reason I'm ready to put him above Harden, because I think Harden lovers may make that same argument that I just made with Steph, is the volatility and the ability to explode. I prefer SGA's portability and his off-ball scoring skill set. I think it's going to translate to the playoffs better, and I think that Shai is more equipped to play alongside other ball-dominant players. Not that either of these guys are off-ball, real deal elite off-ball scorers. I think SGA is better. I prefer him to D-Wade. I prefer SGA's mastery of the entire court. I think he's just way more efficient than Allen Iverson. Shout out Tracy McGrady if we're talking peaks, but I think SGA is on a different level. So I would put him 4 right now behind MJ, Steph, and Kobe. Damn.
I'm just thinking over here, man.
That was a heavy
I would have
bro.
Shai somewhere between 2 and 4. I think that, Tyler, you said what I'm thinking. Like, I would take it maybe even a step further. If Shai maintains this regular season production in the playoffs, and I have the utmost confidence in him as a playoff performer, I think that he is probably number 2. It is a volume and efficiency scoring combination that is like really one of a kind from guards in NBA history. Like 33 points per game on 64% true shooting, basically plus 7% relative true shooting this season. I have said throughout this year, I think he's the most complete on-ball scoring guard ever. And I mean that in terms of his ability to be elite out of all of the different on-ball play types. I mean, he's a 96th percentile efficiency pick and roll scorer. He's a 90th percentile efficiency isolation scorer. One of the greatest isolation scorers of all time, period, point blank. And one of the greatest pick and roll scorers of all time. And he's a legitimately good post-scoring guard when he chooses to attack from there. And his dominance at every level. Like, he is an all-time great rim pressuring and rim finishing guard. He's the best at both of those in the NBA today. He is an all-time great intermediate shot-making guard. He's the best mid-range shot creator and shot maker among all guards in the league today. He shoots 50+% for mid-range. And now he's also this guy who can shoot a high volume of pull-up threes and make 37% of them. And then you just think about the totality of his bag, the number of counters that he has from every spot on this floor. Like, I think that he is the most complete on-ball scoring guard we've ever seen. And that just historically great combination of elite rim scoring and elite shot making alone is something that is so rare and so unique in the history of this game. And, like, I do think that he is built to be a playoff scorer because there's no volatility to his game. I mean, what does Shai say, man? Everything in his life is consistent. He is the most consistent scoring guard we've ever seen outside of Michael Jordan. You look at the guys with the most 25-point games and 30-point games in a season, and it's Shai. It's Shai in each of these last couple seasons because he gets wherever he wants on the floor. And what I always say is when you can dominate that area in the paint in its entirety, at the rim and in the paint outside the restricted area, there's no volatility there. And no defense can take away that mid-range shot making. He made 55% of his mid-range jumpers against Dallas last year. There's no defense in the world that is built to take that away. So I fully believe he is a historic playoff scorer as well. The thing is just like, he's only got one playoff run where he was this version of himself under his belt. And like, Kobe is just one of the greatest playoff scorers we've ever seen and proved that for a half decade. 2006 to 2010, Kobe gives you 29.8 points per game on plus 3% relative true shooting in the playoffs. That's stamped. He did that. I do want to have those individual conversations, though, of Shai versus Kobe and Shai versus Steph. Tyler, why is it that you would give the edge to Kobe right now?
I think, and I was going to say it's all the three guys above him. I think Shai slots in right below these guys for me right now just because I think all three of those guys were like S-tier off-ball players. And that isn't something I've seen with Shai yet. I think Shai stacks up with any of them on ball. Like you said, he's the most complete on-ball scoring guard we've ever seen. Maybe the most complete on-ball scorer in general we've ever seen. It's just like, to me, the big thing is, does he, and he does have some off-ball skills. Don't get me wrong. He does do a decent bit of work off the ball. But you look at a guy like, Steph's just an outlier. He's right. The off-ball movement's crazy. Kobe and Jordan within the triangle, constantly playing off of cuts, off of screens on the move, spot ups, and just things like that. I think they just excelled at. So I think that's where I slightly lean towards them. But then there's another part of my head where I'm like, why do I care if Shai can play off the ball? Because one thing you didn't even touch on, I think the 64% true shooting undersells his efficiency because he doesn't turn the ball over. He's always getting a shot up. Like, he turns the ball over twice a game. His scoring turnover percentage right now is like 4.9%. It's stupid. It's stupid. So yeah, I don't know.
He's the lowest turnover player ever at this scoring volume.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous.
So that's kind of the key debate that I'm having in this conversation because, like, this is going to be tricky to articulate. I almost feel like Steph and Kobe are more valuable scorers than Shai, but they're not better scorers than Shai. Like, when it comes to just putting the ball in the basket with elite efficiency and elite volume that nobody can take away,
I don't get how you're so ready to throw Steph by the wayside, though, for SGA. I just don't get
Here's what I'm saying, Logan. Steph's scoring threat is probably the most valuable in NBA
I completely understand
history.
what you're saying. I completely understand your argument. My thing is Steph's the greatest shooter ever. Like, I just...
Yeah, and I think that Shai is the greatest on-ball scorer ever, the most complete on-ball scorer ever.
To me,
like, nobody can take away what he wants to do.
It's like a wash to me, though, with him and Steph. Like, I still remember prime Steph, bro. Like,
so do I, man.
And I'm with you, Logan. I think Steph had the best regular season scoring peak of all time. Like the 2016 season was the best season a player has ever had as a scorer. Plus 13% relative true shooting is unfathomable on 30 points per game.
So, okay.
But I was going to say, Steph's playoffs have not been that. Like, and it's not like he's been a bad playoff scorer. He's still been a very elite playoff scorer. But instead of like plus 12, plus 13, plus 11, it's been like plus 6, plus 7.
Right.
Like the 2022 playoffs, I think it was like plus 4.5. And that's really, really good, but it's different than this unfathomable efficiency.
Yeah, so this is the point that I was building to when I'm talking about Steph being a more valuable scorer than Shai, because I think that clearly Steph is a far more valuable offensive player even than peak Shai, even though I'm so high on Shai. He's Steph Curry. He has a legitimate case for being the greatest offensive player ever, and that's because of his gravity, right? And what is his gravity? It is his scoring threat off ball at all times. It is the range that he has as a shooter that enhances his team's offense at a rate that we basically haven't seen in the history of this sport. That's his scoring threat, but he's not as productive purely putting the ball in the basket as Shai. And that's like what I'm struggling to balance here, because I do think there are more ways to limit Steph's volume, but it comes with guarding him in a way that nobody else in the history of this sport has been guarded, right? Dedicating a level of off-ball attention to him that we've never seen. Sending two to the ball on these screens that are set 35 feet out. Like, that is all done to prevent him from scoring. So, like, if you could enforce regular defensive rules and principles against Steph Curry, then I think that he would be a more productive scorer, and then that would be the case for him. But with teams defending him as they do, I don't think that he is. And I understand that's a really weird point, but does that make sense? Because that's kind of what I'm trying to balance here.
I think it makes sense.
Okay, it makes sense, but I don't understand how those aren't arguments in favor of Steph Curry.
Because he's saying that he would attribute like the coverages he's seeing as more like going towards his playmaking.
Exactly. It's like playmaking value that is a result of scoring threat.
Exactly. He's that much of a threat, so you have to guard him.
Well, I know. That's what I'm trying to figure out. That's what I'm trying to balance here.
You know what I think is so funny? This is the exact reason I never rank scorers and playmakers anymore, because the two overlap so much. So where it's like, what are we even attributing to what anymore?
I just think it's like, if we're giving SGA the credit, you know, that he can score anywhere inside the arc, that he's got, I mean, Steph can shoot anywhere inside half court. Like, it's like, that's what, and I think Tyler made the best point in an anti-Steph argument, which would be, I would point to his playoffs not being as dominant as his regular season. I think that's and ironically for Kobe too. The issue with Kobe when I look at SGA though, is I look at the complete difference in era that they're playing in, and I go, fuck, man, I don't know what Kobe would look like in the modern NBA, because he might be the greatest scorer on the planet because he's got all this space to work with, you know, vice versa with an Allen Iverson, if you will, right? If they're not playing in these mucked up eras of the game, if they had space to work, how much more dominant would they be? But I can't do it with Steph yet, man. I just can't.
Logan, I want to ask you then. So are you attributing the threat of Steph scoring and the coverages he sees, are you like looping that into your ranking of him as a scorer?
Yes. Okay, I think you have to. It's like Jokic. It's like, am I gonna fault Jokic because they have to send two to the ball every time and then he's an elite playmaker with it? No, they have to guard him with two because he's gonna get buckets in individual coverage. Like, I do count that.
Yeah, but don't you think it's even harder to limit Shai's volume as a scorer, because you give him the ball on an island and he's going to produce more than 1.1 points per possession for you?
Yeah,
like,
I think that's fair, but it's like
half-court offense.
How are we just like throwing Steph's off-ball scoring like away? We're just like, okay,
nobody's throwing it away, Logan. I'm saying
I just think that is such a valuable
for me.
I just think that is such a valuable component of Steph's case.
I agree, and that's why
the most valuable thing about him offensively. But is it purely scoring value?
Well, they defend him like that because if you don't, he's already got the three up and it's in the basket.
Okay, but Logan, then why do you stop at 2? Why isn't he also ahead of MJ then?
Well, because MJ's the GOAT. I mean, come on.
But you see what I'm saying? Though, but like, if you're attributing Steph's like gravity and the way defenses have to approach him, the sheer value just coming from the threat of his scoring would surpass MJ.
Nobody who has ever walked this planet has been as good at putting the ball in the basket as Michael Jordan. That's
saying
just a
Steph
fact.
Curry isn't necessarily as good at putting the ball in the basket in the course of a game as Shai is.
I
It's
just
his
disagree.
threat. Okay, I mean, you don't think that Shai can go 27 points per game on plus 6% relative true shooting in the playoffs? That's what Steph did from 2015 to 2022. I think Shai will surpass that. But I think
Sure.
Steph is the more valuable offensive player because of his scoring threat. So until I see Shai do it in the playoffs, even though I am such a firm believer that he will, I'm going to have him at number 4, breathing down the neck of both Steph and Kobe. But
Yeah.
it's really, really hard, man.
That's where I'm at too. And I think another thing that Shai has in favor over Kobe's probably the weirdest one to evaluate, because I think all of these guys, like we'll stick with this group of 4. I think MJ has the ability to just always get to and finish at the rim. Like that's his hyper efficiency. Steph's hyper efficiency is any shot from 3. Like it's hyper efficiency. Shai's hyper efficiency is I'm going to get wherever I want and it's going to be a good shot. Kobe never had that where it was like I can access this 60% shot or whatever. But the problem was he was good at every type of shot.
Yeah.
Like he never had that one superpower. His superpower was the mid-range, which was like a 45% shot. But then it's like I can make this mid-range everywhere, out of any situation. I'm going to get to the rim. I'm going to get to the line. I'm going to be reliable from 3. I'm going to play on or off the ball. Kobe's a weird one where it's like maybe his numbers don't stack up with some of these other guys we're talking about in terms of efficiency, but he has the counter for literally any situation.
And his playoff efficiency is legitimately good. It's better comparatively than his regular season efficiency, and that's where I think Kobe makes his all-time great case as a scorer. Because you can look at the regular season volume, but you look at the efficiency, it's not going to compare to a number of these guys who we're talking about as all-time great scorers. But to sustain the volume and efficiency against elite playoff defenses, because nobody can take away your versatility, your variety as a shot maker, your ability to get to any spot on the floor in any number of ways, curling around screens, on ball out of pick and roll isolation, being the most skilled post-up guard that we've ever seen. Like, that's his superpower. It's not an efficiency superpower that the other guys have of just this shot is automatic. It is that versatility and how well that holds up in the playoffs. I mean, his resume as a playoff scorer is just so incredible. But I think that Shai certainly has a higher ceiling as a playoff scorer. And I think that he has the ability to surpass him because he just creates more automatic, hyper-efficient offense for himself.
It's so tough with Shai and Kobe, because then I look at Kobe too, and I'm like, 30 points per game in the playoffs in 2008 is so much different than 30 points in the playoffs now. Like Kobe was scoring like 35% of his team's points in like the finals games and stuff.
It's true. So I did do a per possession adjustment here, and it really didn't make a difference because Kobe was just playing so many minutes in the playoffs. But that doesn't account for just the leap in offensive efficiency, offensive rating being more than 10% higher than what it was.
That's what's so tough, because the Lakers could score 92 points in a playoff game and Kobe would have 36 of them. Yeah, that's so like it's crazy. It's crazy,
and do it efficiently compared to league average at the time.
Yeah.
So for now, I'll settle on Shai at 4. Jerry West is a great shout. I do think he would be my 5. He
Honestly,
is a top 3 playoff guard scorer of all time.
I was gonna say, so actually, now that I think about West more, I think West is my number 2. If we're just going strictly off of production, like West's playoff numbers are damn near the same as MJ's. He was like 40 points a game, +7, +8. So like if we're just going sheerly off of the playoff production, West kind of has to be my number 2. So I guess I'll go with Shai at 5.
It's fair. He's 29 points per game in the playoffs on I think +6% relative true shooting.
And the heights he hit in like 65.
Unbelievable. And just like another guy with that all-time combination of getting to the rim, getting to the line, and then also being such a phenomenal shot maker that obviously you don't have the value of the three ball that you did back then. But still, I mean, just being such an excellent jump shooter that he was a hyper-efficient player. I think I'm still going to have him at 5. And then I think I would go Luka, Harden, Oscar, Gervin. And I don't know. I guess I don't have a number 10.
So no Reggie? Reggie's not in that mix for you?
Oh, do we have to get back to scoring threat versus scoring production? I think Reggie's one of the most valuable scoring talents of all time.
His
efficiency is top tier all time.
He was hitting like
It's
the
him,
plus
Steph
11s
Barkley.
and the plus 12s in the playoffs.
It's so stupid. It's so stupid. But no, I don't think that I would have him quite this high. I think I'd have him probably top 15.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, AI.
T-Mac,
Yeah.
too. T-Mac's another guy. Like, T-Mac absolute peak was crazy.
Yeah, the thing with T-Mac that's so hard is, like, 2003, it's basically one
Outlier.
arguably outlier pull-up
Yes.
three-point shooting season, and, like,
Yeah.
that's what makes it such an insane peak. His efficiency in all the years around that is just rough, and the raw production isn't the same. So that was a fun conversation. That was an interesting conversation. I know there's going to be Harden truthers out there who are like, why isn't he here? And the answer is just playoffs, scoring variety, versatility. I brought a bunch of Harden numbers in case. I knew Logan wasn't going to bring him up, but I knew that Tyler, you might. I don't know. I just know Logan.
I'm a big Harden guy. I'm dropping a Harden video today. So.
Hell yeah. Everybody go check that out. I guess I'll drop the numbers anyway. 2016 to 2020 in the playoffs, 29 points per game, but 50% effective field goal percentage, 4.5 turnovers a game. I do think that's such an important point in Shai's value, being able to be that ball dominant and that low turnover. And, like, his isolation efficiency, his pick and roll scoring efficiency, they both fell to just, like, slightly above league average. Like, if the step back three had been going in a different way in the playoffs, maybe it could have been different. But I think there's a reason that it wasn't. I think that your legs wear down when you have that sort of offensive volume deep into a playoff run like that. And you got to have counters. You got to have a bunch of different answers. And I think all these other guys have more answers, more variety than James Harden there. Before we let you go, Tyler, I want to open up the floor to you because Logan and I ranked our top 30 players in the NBA a couple weeks ago, and I'm just interested what stands out to you. What do you disagree with most from our player rankings?
So I have a question. Before I get
Yes.
into my differences, I have a question for both of you. I'm assuming you base it off of impact, right? Like you guys are saying the better player is generally the more impactful player.
Yeah.
Going into the playoffs, probably
Correct.
more playoff.
Exactly. So weighted towards the playoff, only concern really is winning impact.
Okay, so I agree. Now, is that impact situationally or is that impact in a vacuum?
That was kind of a balance to be struck with. That's kind of the hard part, in my opinion, with
Okay.
ranking the guys. Because
Yeah,
I think there's better floor raisers, there's better ceiling raisers.
Yeah.
I think it honestly depends on the individual player on like a case-by-case basis.
Okay. So my entire philosophy is impact in a vacuum, and I think that's why this first guy we're so different. There's only one guy where I was so different on, and it's Porzingis, because I think Porzingis is in the absolute best possible situation for his impact on both ends, and I think that juices him to a level that I just do not think he'd be at on any other team. Like, for example, I think one thing you always reference is the rim protection numbers, because when people get to the rim, they cannot score on Porzingis. Years ago, I remember Anthony Edwards said that Porzingis was the best defender in the league because he couldn't score on him at the rim. So I think that there's real value there, but I think Porzingis is a positionally pretty weak drop defender in my opinion. I don't think he's quick enough to execute any other coverage. And so I think the Celtics are able to put him in this spot where it's like, we're going to pre-switch. We're going to keep you at the rim. You don't have to defend in space. You don't have to do these things. You can just alter shots at the rim. And also I think he's kind of a like slow processor as a defender. Like I think if you relied on him to be your like free safety defensive captain, I don't think he could do what a Giannis or a Mobley or what any of those guys do behind the play. So I think defensively, I view him as like a strong positive, but I think he's very clearly the worst defender of their top six in a vacuum.
Ooh.
So I think like if you look at
versatility-wise,
Drew,
That's
White,
interesting.
Brown, Tatum, and Horford, I think are all clearly better defenders in the playoffs.
but are they more valuable?
More valuable on, maybe not more valuable on the Celtics, but more valuable if they were all in like a random situation.
I think Porzingis' rim protection alone puts him over some of those guys for me.
Yeah.
Specifically White, Holiday, like the wings, and then
I see where you're coming from. I just feel like
It's hard.
I mean, it's a
to me,
ridiculous.
Let me
like,
ask you
it's
this:
just a
would you
ridiculous
really
number.
rather have Al Horford anchor your defense? Like, the switchability is still remarkable. The rim protecting is so inferior to KP's
Yes.
that if I'm just starting with a default defense, I want that elite interior rim protector anchor.
so that's where I think specifically for Boston, Porzingis brings their defense to another level because I think the four wings can do everything around him. But I think if I'm starting a defense from scratch, I think Horford gives me more options. I think I can do more. And I think that
but his high-end trade is not as valuable night to night. Like, just if you're talking about a base defense, I think that KP is so valuable as
in the regular
rim
season
protector.
I think in the
He's
regular
a more
season,
valuable regular season defender.
I agree with that. I agree with that. But I think if you go into the playoffs, I think the switchability probably becomes more valuable. And I think Porzingis is the type of guy that a lot of defenses would try to attack in a playoff series because he just can't do as much schematically. And I think that's also why I think Boston's defense got better in the finals when Porzingis went down because Luka was putting Porzingis in every action. And then once it was Horford was just switching and clamping him.
Yeah, that's fair.
So that's my pushback with That's
dude.
That's my pushback with Porzingis on defense. On offense, I think I actually think he's a much better offensive than defensive player. Yeah. I think it's weird for me to say I'm lower on Porzingis. I think compared to consensus, I'm higher on Porzingis. I just think you guys are both so high on Porzingis that I feel lower. Because like philosophy-wise, I'm thinking like someone who attacks mismatches, someone who spaces the floor. Like those are the things you want. I just feel like when I look at like a top 20 or top 25 player, I don't think Porzingis is a guy you can actually run offense through. Like I think he's an elite post scorer, but all of his post ups are like, oh, I got a guard switched onto me. Let me quickly score over him. It's not let's get the ball to Porzingis in the post and let's play off the advantage. That's not really his game. So I think I just have like a fundamental difference in where I look at Porzingis. I think on Boston, I think situationally he is their second most valuable player. And I think like situationally he probably has top 25 value. But if I'm thinking of it in a vacuum and I'm like, okay, I'm going to put Porzingis on a random playoff team, I don't think he's in my top 30.
I think that makes sense. I mean, I think it comes down to kind of that ceiling floor dynamic that I was talking about, right? Like if you were going to start your team, would you rather have Kristaps Porzingis or Cade Cunningham? I definitely rather have Cade, but who do I want for a playoff run? I want Porzingis, and it's specifically the value specifically for me, the reason that Porzingis isn't that hard to slot into that spot is because of his positional value at the 5 spot. Because he's an elite post scorer. Because if he gets that switch, it's an automatic bucket. And maybe this is recency bias, but I mean, damn, dude, he would come in for 15 minutes, 20 minutes in the finals. He'd shut shit down, and they'd send him out. He was like a hired mercenary. He was like a gun. Like, we're going to send this guy in, he's going to murder everybody, and then he's going to leave, and he's going to be done. And that's what Porzingis did, and he just provides such Carson and I always talk about it, but the valuable A-plus traits, the most valuable things that you can do, I think, in the modern NBA at the 5 spot, he brings it to me. And so he's not a perfect basketball player by any means. Like, he is injury-prone. He is rigid in the things that he does, but he's also really solid. Again, the post scoring, the mismatch attacking, the floor spacing and shooting, the rim protection. I think it's all basically an A or an A-plus trait, and that's why he's there for me. Real quick, before I let you take over, Carson, do you think that, to you, Tyler, is he their second best player?
No, and I was going to get into that in my next, because another difference I have is Jaylen Brown, but I'll let Carson talk about Porzingis first.
I think that you made the anti-Porzingis being as high as we have him take very well. I understand what you're saying about the lack of defensive versatility and his situational value in Boston being greater there than it would be in a vacuum. Although I do still think, even though he has his limitations guarding in space, he's actually not a great rebounding 5. Being that elite as a rim protector is valuable. It does make you a clear positive defensively in any situation. So, yeah, I think that he's certainly a strong defensive player. But to me, it's really about the offense. And that's where you can still argue he is at his best in Boston's system because you're not trying to use him as a hub where certain limitations like his playmaking would be more of an issue. You have this guy who has an extremely lean, hyper-efficient, almost specialized offensive game where he is just absolutely dominant and destructive at these two things, and everybody around him is skilled offensively and they can create, so he's only asked to attack in certain spots, and when he does so, I mean, he's just one of the best in the world. I just don't have a problem with a lean, hyper-efficient, specialized offensive game from a big. Like, if you're going to bring me elite rim protection defensively, and then I'm going to say, okay, if you get a mismatch in the post, you are a top 2 player on the planet at scoring over those guys. And if we need you to space off ball as a spot-up guy, you're a top 2 3-point shooting big on the planet. You're the best pick and pop big on the planet out of pick and roll. Like, I just think he is such a walking matchup nightmare. Nobody is equipped to deal with him on the offensive end. So, no, I mean, if he's your best player, you're going to be a very mediocre basketball team. But if he's your second best player, I think he's one of the best ceiling-raising players and bigs in the NBA. And that's the thing, when I look at the guys who I have around him, because I do think that I probably favor ceiling raising more than the average person compared to floor raising. Like, my goal is to win a title. That's the framework through which I view a lot of these conversations. Who do I think gives the best chance of enhancing one of those rosters? KP is one of those guys. And I compared him to some of the other bigs, Chet, Karl Anthony Towns. Like, yeah, Cat can take on more of an offensive load, obviously, but with his defensive issues, I'm still taking KP, who I think can be so productive and efficient offensively. And compared to Chet, who I absolutely love, I just think KP's offensive game is still so much more polished. I mean, the mismatch attacking is on a different level. The shot is more reliable, so that's why I went him there. But let's talk about Jaylen Brown, because I am low on Jaylen Brown. I can't deny it.
I got one more thing on Porzingis, and then we'll go to Jaylen Brown. My thing with Porzingis, too, is I think the Celtics have crafted such a perfect roster that he never has to dribble. And I think that is a big deal, because you look back at the Dallas years, like, they needed him to basically be a second creator, and they didn't have all of these other guys to supplement him. And he basically was relegated to just like, I'm only going to touch the ball in spot ups. And some of that is the Luka
Rick
thing.
Carlisle literally said, go stand in the corner, bro.
Yeah.
I don't think Porzingis is a guy you can really, really run offense through. And I think that's why I would prefer the offensive game of guys like Jaren and Mobley, who you can legitimately go to as ball handlers and have them create.
Yeah, but there are also matchups in which, like, I worry about Mobley being able to impose himself physically. I worry about the consistency of his shot. This is as the biggest Evan Mobley fan on the planet. With Jaren Jackson Jr., I worry about his passing more than I worry about KP's passing. I really worry about what happens to him if you send doubles at him. So that's where I think that KP's polish and just excellence A+ in those couple areas is so valuable. And the area where I would push back on what you were just saying, even though I don't disagree, and I think, right, if you talk about KP's limitations, it's playmaking, it's ball handling, it's the ability to create in spots where you ask him to do those things, the Washington season would be basically my pushback. Yeah. Now, again, it's not like he was a high-end offensive hub, but that was a bad offensive situation. And KP was giving you 24 points per game on 63% true shooting. He was a 90th percentile post scorer. He was an 86th percentile isolation scorer. So he was still bringing that elite offensive production efficiency as a scorer in those same play types in a much worse offensive situation. I just think there's very few teams who can deal with a guy who is 7'3", who has gotten so much more comfortable playing with physicality than he was in Dallas, when he was honestly one of the most frustrating players in basketball to me. Like, I did not like Dallas KP. And then the Washington season happened, and I said, whoa, this guy's a monster now, and I've just maintained that view in Boston.
That's fair. Yeah, that's totally fair. I see where you're coming from with, like, Porzingis having these A+ qualities. I guess my only real, like, if I just had to group it into, like, one short thing, what I said in the first segment about in the playoffs, I think the most valuable thing is schematic versatility. I just think of the top 30 players on your list, Porzingis is very obviously the least schematically versatile, and I just push back.
I think it's Sabonis.
Did Carson have
I had him at 29. Logan
so did you guys both have him, or did Logan not have him? I feel like I was gonna say I feel like one of you didn't have him, and I'd agree. I think Sabonis is probably less schematically versatile than Porzingis, but that's a different discussion. I think so. Jaylen Brown is the other guy I push back on, because I think, like I said, situationally, I think you can argue Kristaps has been the second most valuable player on the Celtics, but I think Jaylen Brown is like the exact antithesis of what I said in terms of Jaylen Brown's one of the most schematically versatile players of the decade. Like, in terms of everything he can do on both ends of the floor. I think it's been a down year for him in terms of scoring efficiency, especially for like from 2 and 3. But I think that kind of overshadows the fact that this has been his best season drawing fouls, and it's clearly been his best season as a passer. Like, he's finding kick out passes more, he's more willing, he's making tougher reads. And I think just the sheer amount of pressure he puts on the rim in space. And you could also make the argument that this is the best possible situation for Jalen with the 5 out and the ability to get downhill. But he's such a mismatch. Like in the Indiana series, there was nothing they could do to stop him from getting a paint touch every single possession. And even the same goes for the Dallas series. It was different because he wasn't muscling his way, but they couldn't stay in front of him, and he didn't score super efficiently. But all of Boston's offense starts with either Tatum or Brown dribble penetration.
What did you think about that Oklahoma City game, Tyler?
Bad, just bad, just bad. And I think that's like
hey Logan, which one? Am I right? Because they were both bad.
The other variable with Jalen is that he has a very low floor because the shooting is super streaky. And if there is a defense that can stop him from getting to the paint, I don't really trust his scoring. He's a high turnover guy sometimes. But I think the selling point is the defense, actually. And I think it's specifically the playoff defense. I think last year in the playoffs, this is a very hot take, but it's something I've believed since that point, since the Indiana series, really. I think you could argue he was their best defender in last year's playoff run.
Come on, Tyler.
I think you could argue, I think he cleaned up the off-ball stuff. He was a high-level rim protector at the wing. He was picking up Luka full court, sticking through screens. He was switching 1 through 5 in every series. He was guarding Mobley. He was guarding Bam. Like, I just think Jalen's defensive versatility is one of the single most valuable qualities you can have as a wing in this league. So my take on Jalen is in the regular season, I didn't even think he should have been an all-star. I didn't have him as an all-star.
Yeah.
But I think in these 2 months that we're about to approach, I think you could argue he's one of the 20 best players on the planet. I just think the schematic versatility on both ends is just, it's so valuable for Boston.
I did have Jalen in my top 25. I think there's just more things that I'm weary about. Like, I love him as a transition scorer, and I think specifically here in Boston, the fact that this is such an elite defensive team and they can set him up for those easy buckets, like, that's a problem. That's a secret weapon that I think Boston has. Like, their three-point shooting is a weapon. Their defense is a weapon. How do you really weaponize that defense? You have a guy who's a problem in transition, and I think that's my favorite thing about Jaylen Brown. It's what you were talking about with the defensive switchability and versatility and the ability to guard these really strong wings. That's rare. Right, because we always praise like a Herb Jones or a Jaden McDaniels. What are you going to do when you get matched up against that thick, strong guy like Luka? Those guys can get bullied. Jaylen Brown isn't going to get bullied like that. He's an elite transition scorer. My thing is, I do worry about him in certain matchups, and I guess I'm scarred a little bit more from Oklahoma City. Like, I get that you're praising him for his playmaking. I think he's still limited as a playmaker. I think he's still limited as a ball handler severely. He is a bad shooter of the basketball. I'm just not confident in his half-court offensive game whatsoever. I think Jaylen Brown is a really special transition scorer. I think with space and a runway, he's a really good downhill threat. I think he's a problem defensively, but I just don't think he's a good half-court offensive player. And that's why I had the debate of, do I have Jaylen Brown in my top 25? Ultimately, out of respect for him and the playoff run that we saw from him last year, I did include him, but Brown was closer to being left off of my list than he was climbing into the top 20. And it's tough, man. It's tough with Boston evaluating these guys, evaluating them inside and outside of the situation. But yeah, I think Brown's a little bit more flawed.
I do think that he's pretty flawed. I think that he has several major flaws that make me concerned about his value if you were to take him out of Boston, which I do think is an ideal offensive situation for anybody, but especially for Jalen when he is such a beneficiary of being able to have that space if it's to play the drive and kick game, where I still think he's a well below average playmaker for a star wing. Like, I think a lot of these reads are very easy. It's drive and kick to any of the 40% three-point shooters all around you. Like, Boston's just offensive utopia if it's giving him space to go to work as a mismatch attacker. And when he can't attack mismatches, I really think his offensive game breaks down in the half court. He's a bad ball handler. The worst ball handling star wing in basketball, bar none. It's not close. And so OKC is a very unique defense, but you put him against a defense with that sort of speed and perimeter depth and talent that harass you on ball like that can apply that sort of ball pressure. And there's no defensive weak point. There's no mismatch to attack. What happens? His offensive game breaks down. He has been terrible against OKC, and I don't see that getting better with him on ball. And so if you can take away his mismatch attacking, if you can force him into turnovers as a ball handler, he's going to start resorting to the jumper more. And as Logan said, he's been a bad jump shooter this season. And like, yeah, it's been the worst year of his career. Jaylen Brown has usually been like an average jump shooter, but this year he's 39% from mid-range, under 32% from deep, 28th percentile efficiency on jumpers. So I put that together. I think there's limitations to his on-ball scoring skill set. I think he's a below-average playmaker. I don't think that he is a particularly valuable off-ball player because of his limitations as a shooter there. Overall, he's a below-average efficiency scorer. And then defensively, I think on-ball he is phenomenal. Maybe I'm lower on his off-ball defense than you are. I don't think that he's a particularly valuable rim defending wing, and I think that he still has a number of lapses that are just like inexcusable. Just I watch a game and I'm like, how'd you miss that back cut? He's just not as locked in on the team defense as a lot of the really elite perimeter wing defenders are in basketball, in my opinion. So I do think he's a beneficiary of his situation, and I think a lot of times people just overlook his flaws. Like Jaylen Brown has had a bad season. He has. And it's like he has one big game and then we're back to the discourse of, oh, is Tatum or Brown their best player? And I feel like he has that luxury of being really a supporting piece in the best situation in basketball.
Yeah, no, it's fair. And my point on the off-ball defense, I think over the course of an 82-game season, I agree with you. I think he's just a bad off-ball defender. Mm-hmm. My argument was that I thought in last year's playoffs when he was zoned in, like he was not missing those rotations. There was a fourth quarter in Dallas where it was like a tie game, and he had 2 or 3 huge plays at the rim in a row to just like meet someone and send it away. And I was like, man, like he's everywhere, because just a possession ago he was picking up Luka 94 feet, and then on the other end he's creating all of the advantages. Like I don't know.
Last year in the playoffs, that was the best basketball he's played of his life, bar none.
So maybe
I'm just not as confident in him replicating that.
So that's our difference. I think I'm basically just giving him the benefit of the doubt until I see otherwise. Because like I agree with everything Logan, both of you said about the half-court offensive flaws. I don't even have him as a top 30 offensive player. Most of where I'm getting the value from is the defense. Like I just straight up think he's a top, like in the playoffs last year, he was a top 7 to top 10 wing defender in the league. And that's just kind of where I'm like willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. But like I said, over the course of the regular season, he wouldn't be in my top 30. So it's like, it's more of just like a benefit of the doubt type thing as opposed to a philosophical difference. Those were my only 2 really like big differences. Okay. I think I was a little bit lower on Chet than both of you guys. But it was kind of negligible. It was some of the same stuff as Porzingis, where I think he's just got a little bit of exploitable flaws. And I think I was a bit higher on Jaren than both of you guys, which we already kind of hinted at a little bit. Jaren's a weird, very weird player.
He is.
The last guy is I'm wait and see with Kawhi. I don't even think Logan ranked Kawhi, but Carson had him 16th, I think it was. So yeah, I'm wait and see. I don't know what to do with Kawhi yet.
So hard. Like that was a couple weeks ago, and now I'm wishing that I had him higher. I'm wishing that I had him at like 12 or 13, but then what happens if his body breaks down? I don't know. I feel like I was just trying to walk the line between who he had been up to that point and my expectation for who he'd become by a postseason, which is really the guy who he's been now for these last few weeks. I am so high on healthy Kawhi. I just think he's like,
dude, I think I ranked him 5th or 6th last season, and people were pissed.
Same, not a bad take. Last season, not a bad take. I think I had him 6 or 7. Yeah, I think he's such a monster, and especially considering that we are valuing the playoffs more highly. That's when Kawhi is at his absolute best, when his body doesn't break down 2 games into it. But just like nobody can keep him from his spots. He's an insane pull-up shooter. He's got elite strength. He's got elite ball handling. Just absolutely dominant in the postseason.
He's like on a short list of the most complete scorer ever, because on or off ball, all 3 levels, getting to the line, like there's literally nothing he can't do as a scorer.
It's true. Except now I would say,
now
this year, getting to the line, getting to the rim is not there. But still, like, he can give you an efficient 25 a night just because the shot making and all the other things that we talked about, they're just that great. And that's why I feel like top 12, somewhere in that range is like the right spot to put him. Because I think the top 11 are pretty locked in right now. I think that there's 11 top 10 players, I'd like to say. Tyler, thank you so much for coming on, man. Thank you for giving us your time. this was a whole lot of fun, and we always love having you on and getting your perspective. Love getting your takes on our rankings, getting your takes on some of the historical stuff. So everybody, if you aren't already, go subscribe to Hoop Venue. Go check out the Hoop Venue podcast that Tyler does. And just support him everywhere because the guy does phenomenal content, obviously, and he's a delight to talk to. So thank you for coming on, man.
Yeah, appreciate you guys having me, man. This was fun. We got to do another one, like playoff predict. We got to do some playoff predictions.
Yeah, man, we've got a lot still incoming over these next couple months. Maybe, well, I know that you're Central Time, right? So that'd be pretty late for you. But we're gonna go live like basically every night after the playoff game. So maybe if you're down for a late night, one of those nights, we could
I'll
get you on. But
I'll let you know. I'll let you know
all
for
right,
sure.
Hell yeah. Everybody, go support Tyler. Go check out Hoop Venue. And if you want more of our content, well, there's plenty more of it. Luckily, you can find all of our full episodes on our YouTube channel. You can also find our video breakdowns, video essays there where we go more in depth on a single topic. You can listen to the podcast across all audio platforms. And you can follow us across social if you want. TikTok, Instagram at NerdSesh, Twitter at Nerd_Sesh to see clips from the show, graphics from the show, and all of our short-form trivia content. And if you want, you can join our Discord. That's linked at the link tree across our social media bios. So with that, as always, I've been Carson Brabber.
I've been Logan Camden.
I have been Tyler, Hoop Venue.
And this was Nerd Sesh.